لوجوس تي في. أن نحضر كل إنسان كاملا في المسيح يسوع.
Good evening. Welcome to the Coptic Cafe program. I'm Father Joseph, your host. Welcome to this hour of the program. Our phone number here is 818-342-3388. We welcome your calls and your comments. As we have been doing previously in the Coptic Cafe, we examine the news and we try to see the relevance of the Bible teaching in the church in light of what is going on in the news. And of recent month, we've had several incidents and scandals that come up, and it questions the very ethics of the people that are in high position and high power. And ethics begins when someone is young, it begins at home, and it begins at church. And this evening, I'd like to examine some of the events that have been happening in this country, as well as see the relevance of the Bible teachings and the ethics behind the decisions people in high places make. I am joined here in the studio this evening with Hatem Tadros. Hatem, thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you, Buna. Thank you for having us.
And also Ramon Tadros, no relations, we have to mention that.
We're just like brothers. But
Yes. I'd like to begin the program today, and we're not going to get into the big scandals that we've been hearing about in the news, whether it's the scandal of the IRS scrutinizing conservative groups, or the AP scandal, or the Benghazi hearings that have been going on. In discussing all of this, we really want to get down to the fact that the Bible has produced the country that this country is today. Because the founding fathers founded America based on biblical principles. Even the atheists of them believed in higher power. And this country is the best revelation of the Bible teaching. For 200 years, the country has been living with Christian principles. And only of recent time, in the past 50 years or so, things started changing. And if we want to see what Christianity can produce, we can look to this country because it had implemented those teachings. But we have been undoing many of the good things that this country has put forward. And with this, let me start with welcoming Hatem again and asking, Hatem, what do you think about all the things that you hear in the news?
Well, I think it's, as we hear more and more of these come out, and as we see more and more of the scandals unfold in front of us, I think we do well to remember that ethics is what you do when you don't think anyone else is watching. And clearly these scandals happen because these are people in very high positions, and they thought that no one else was watching and that no one else would find out. And I think that we as Christians have a very clear moral compass that tells us what is ethical and what is not ethical. This compared to people who don't have a relationship with God, don't have a relationship with the Bible, and don't want to have a clear understanding in their minds of what ethics is and what is ethical versus unethical.
Ramon, how have you reacted to these scandals, being a Christian and thinking of Christian morals and biblical teachings, and you see that very scary things that have been going on that could effectively unravel what this country has become?
I think it's not something that happened overnight. So this is something in the making, and some people happen to see it sooner than others. But I think this is sort of we're reaping we're sowing we're reaping what we've sowed, so to speak, over the last 40 years. And so unless we are focused again on bringing Christ back into our lives, whether it's in education, in careers, and just in everyday life in this country, like I said, it was founded on Christian principles, not just religious principles, but Christian principles, and the founding fathers, I think they would be terrified to see what it's become now. So it doesn't take much to change. You have to start somewhere. They started off, the group that changed the country, so to speak, started off as a small group and then increased and wasn't taken seriously in the beginning. And now I think it's our turn to try to take some of the organizations back, like schools, universities, the media per se, and the news, because a lot of the stuff that's been happening has evolved over 40 years, and now we're just seeing the fruits of it.
You've been watching the Coptic Cafe program. We welcome your calls here. The number is 818-342-3388. 818-342-3388. I'd like to watch video number 5. If we could please roll clip number 5 and look at what some of the think tanks are saying and how they analyze what's going on in the country. So let's watch the clip together.
Well, I don't think anyone can deny that we have a problem here.
We're in an ethical mess. I started working in the prisons 35 years ago. There were 229,000 people in prison. Today, there's 2.3 million.
The financial crisis has rocked the world and shaken markets worldwide.
Lenders were encouraged by the government to lend to less creditworthy buyers.
Almost everyone in a position of financial authority embraced it.
At the same time, they sold them short and hammered them like mad, raked in money. At every level, they were deceiving the people they were dealing with.
Well, Wall Street not only saw no evil, but saw a great deal of virtue, which could be quantified in billions of dollars. That was the virtue of it.
Why are we surprised when there's a lack of ethics in the lenders, Wall Street, government? It's an inescapable consequence of neglecting moral training.
One of the things we need to do is resensitize ourselves to evil and resensitize ourselves to good.
That was a time when I should have stopped and said, wait a minute, Mr. President, think about the consequences of this. But I did not. Self-righteousness is believing you're so good that you couldn't be compromised. And that's the kind of pride that's fatal.
Business schools need to start thinking about right and wrong and ethics. But that's a very difficult challenge if the professors don't know how to teach it or think that way.
Students simply were not aware of questions of moral philosophy.
They say, well, ethics is following your own integrity or following your conscience. But what if you have a poorly formed conscience? What if you're a jerk?
The problem is, in Harvard Business School, there's no fundamental agreement on the way the world works. And so you're reduced to discussing practical behavior.
So truth has got to be knowable for there to be ethics.
It would be hard to live a life as a consistent moral relativist, not making any kinds of moral claims.
If you're a purely accepted moral relativist position, then you have no ground on which to stand to say why another person is wrong.
The sure consequence of the attempt to liberate oneself from demanding moral norms and obligations is slavery.
It's resulting in more harm to the society in general than anything else in my lifetime. It is unutterably destructive. How's that working for you?
Eugenics is very much alive and well.
It's back. And we now face the question, are we going to buy it or not buy it?
A proper understanding of who the human person is. If we lose that, and we are losing that, it becomes very, very dangerous.
Quadriplegics like me have never fared well in societies that view life as dispensable.
People are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. This is the fundamental ethic on which the Western civilization was built. You don't give human rights to people and you can't take them away. Human rights are God-given.
Central power, like all power, has to be checked. It has to be limited.
Government must be under the moral law. And if the government violates those rights, it should be changed.
My uncle did write and did say, if a law is unjust, it is our moral responsibility to resist the unjust law. And that is the basis of the civil rights movement.
In the case of Tycho and innumerable other recent cases, it all went terribly wrong.
Things were pretty badly broken inside the company.
When you lose a sense of trust, market economies fail.
The dream is, if I can just achieve this much more, I'll fill that emptiness.
The thing with money is it doesn't make you happy. Doing the right things, that's what makes you happy.
We made a decision that we thought was going to cost us money. I don't think it's cost us a dime by being a good corporate responsible citizen.
But the market also both requires and nurtures the virtue of service, hard work, and discipline, and diligence.
It's got to begin in homes, in churches, in schools. At every level, we have to be working together to rebuild a consensus around a sound and coherent ethic.
The family, religion, culture, this is what has to be transformed.
Our recognition of duty to do what's right, even in the face of powerful temptations and incentives to do what's wrong.
And that is the great goal of life.
Am I doing what's right for other people who, like me, are made in the image and likeness of God?
The message that we give in our churches is very clear and very obvious, that we adhere to the teachings and the principles of the Bible. But when we live in a society, Ramon, how does it work that we become desensitized to evil?
I think they touched on the idea of moral relativism. I mean, I know it's a very deep topic, but just to touch on it, if there's no basis for truth, then anything goes. And so, we want to start moving forward and trying to build a society that's ethical, but yet we're questioning whether a man's a man or a woman's a woman. And so you can't move forward if the fundamentals of life are not clear. We want to move forward, but we don't know if a baby deserves to live or die. So what a group of people has done, and I think it's an ideology, and it's grown from a small sort of a swelled up from a couple people, from Karl Marx and a lot of the communist Mao and Lenin and all these folks, to just a major ideology with really no leader, no de facto leader. And so you can't have an ethical society that doesn't understand that the family is the foundation of society. That in order for a child to thrive, you have to have a male and a female father and mother. So again, we unfortunately get desensitized because we get distracted from the truths, and we end up having to defend the most basic elements of society, truths of society, that we can't move forward if all we're doing is defending things like, does God really exist? Is a man, or is a baby a person? So that's a good way to lose track of morality when you can't understand basics.
Hatem, what kind of message that bombards our youth and young people, that you become numb to good and evil?
Yeah, I think it was just as Ramon was saying, I think that the message of moral relativism and pluralism are always bombarding everything that we see and we hear on the media. No one is absolutely right. What's right for her may not be right for her, may not be right for him. And so we don't have a basis from which to proceed. We don't have an absolute truth to go forward. And we in our church know that truth comes from the Bible. And we know that the absolute truth is there, and that guides us and gives us a clear moral compass. And I think it's a shame that we have some of these even voices coming from within our own church. At times we say we don't have to force our religion on others or so on. But are these same voices opposed to the evangelism that the disciples did in going and spreading the word of our Lord Jesus Christ? So we as Christians have a duty to bless this country by being present in it and by being fruitful with Christian works and showing what it is to be a Christian. And I think from there we begin to build on what the moral compass and the clarity is that we really need.
Part of the importance of what we're talking about and adhering to the biblical principles is the scandal of the IRS. This is very familiar to everyone who pays taxes. We all know the power of the IRS and the infinite resources they have when they want to bring someone into their scrutiny. Of course, the scandal is about the IRS targeting specific groups, conservative groups, right before the elections. Ramon, how is that just politics as usual? People try to get away with what they can. Is this harmful? Is it superficial? Is it deep?
When it's superficial is the last thing, the furthest way to describe the truth on that. Richard Nixon, who was obviously close to being impeached and resigned in fear of being impeached, tried to use the IRS to sort of coerce people into, sort of punish his enemies, if you will, and he couldn't do it. The people in the IRS refused to do that, and so he resigned or was pretty much almost impeached for a lesser offense. What happened in the IRS is sort of the beginning of a tyranny. When we look at a place like maybe our motherland, where things are not equal, there's no justice, where one person may be treated one way for their faith, and another person may be discriminated against for their faith. This is exactly what happened. The groups that were discriminated against was not 70-30 or 80-20. It was 100-0. They asked them things like, what books did you read before we give you 501c3 status? They asked them, what kind of prayers do you begin your meetings with before we give you your 501c3 status? And this is only Christian groups, by the way. There was other groups that applied for tax-exempt status, other Muslim groups, for instance, that were not scrutinized in the same way. So there's no doubt that not just conservatives, but Christians in particular were being targeted. And so, to me, a lot of people think, surprisingly to me, that the government can never do anything to harm you. We go after companies like Tyco or companies who had schemes that stole a lot of money from people, yet if the government has this scheme that's been going on for 60 years where people may not get Social Security in 30 years, people think, well, it's the government, they can never harm us. So it really is scary that people sort of have a blind trust. Well, they question the church and they question our faith. But we don't question with boldness people who are just like us, who are sinners, who are fallen creatures like ourselves from making mistakes.
I'd like to watch video number 1, if we can roll clip number 1, and get your feedback on your comments after we watch it. So let's roll video number 1, and by the way, we welcome your participation on this topic. The number here is 818-342-3388. We welcome your calls and comments. Please join us. Let's watch the clip together.
Explosive accusations facing the IRS, and as we reported on Friday, the agency is accused of targeting conservative political groups during the 2012 election cycle. However, tonight, Fox News can confirm that the additional scrutiny went well beyond simply harassing organizations with the words Tea Party or Patriot in their title. We're also learning tonight that the IRS guidelines, including groups, have focused on government spending, debt, taxes, entities interested in making, quote, America a better place to live, and even those critical of how this country is run. And for the very first time, the president was asked about these downright un-American, taxpayer-funded witch hunts, and not surprisingly, he immediately declared his innocence. Watch this.
I first learned about it from the same news reports that I think most people learned about this. I think it was on Friday. This is pretty straightforward. If, in fact, IRS personnel engaged in the kind of practices that have been reported on and were intentionally targeting conservative groups, then that's outrageous. And there's no place for it. They have to be held fully accountable.
Now, while the president claims he only found out about this late last week, members of his own administration were reportedly alerted that conservative groups were being targeted nearly 2 years ago. Now, according to the Wall Street Journal, an upcoming report from the Treasury Department's Inspector General will reveal a top IRS lawyer named Lois Lerner was informed about this practice in June of 2011. However, almost a year later, after Lerner was briefed, her boss, the commissioner of the IRS, appeared before lawmakers and Congress and denied that this was taking place. Watch this.
Can you give us assurances that the IRS is not targeting particular groups based on political leanings?
First, let me start by saying yes, I can give you assurances. As you know, we pride ourselves on being a non-political, nonpartisan organization. And so there's absolutely no targeting. This is the kind of back and forth that happens when people apply for 501c4 status.
All right, joining me now with reaction, somebody who has been working behind the scenes for years to expose this abuse of power by the IRS and the Obama administration. Nationally syndicated radio talk show host, we call him the Great One, Mark Levin. We dragged him out of his bunker tonight. Great One, good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Sean.
All right, that comment that we just played by the head of the IRS denying that this was taking place even though they knew about it a year prior, that was 1 day later. You, through your organization, the Landmark Legal Foundation, filed this report that really got this ball rolling with the Inspector General's office. So the timing of this was very key. Why don't you walk us through how this all got started?
Well, first of all, I just heard you play the clip of the president say, if this is true, did he not hear his own IRS official on Friday confess and apologize to the facts, the limited amount of facts that are on the table? Of course it's true. The IRS just said it's true.
You're watching the Coptic Cafe program. The phone number here is 818-342-3388. Hatem, what's your reaction to this video?
Well, I mean, I think the whole scandal is very, very serious. I think that, people who get a letter from the IRS, the reaction is they may not sleep at night. This is a very worrisome thing that happens. I think the timeline is important too. I think that some of these groups that were conservative in nature started in 2009, in April of 2009, on tax day, on April 15th. About a year later, in April of 2010, they became a more serious threat. These rallies were not just loose aggregations of people. They were serious. They were demonstrating on the National Mall. They became a threat, and during April of 2010, there were confirmed meetings of people getting together in the IRS and saying, let's begin doing this, let's begin targeting them. So this, in the lead up to the 2010 elections of November of 2010, and even in those elections, there was a clear backlash against government. So I think the timeline is clear, and it was deliberate, and I think that the practices are very serious, and as Ramon was saying, they were asking even to the level of prayers and the context of the books that they were reading. So I think it's a really terrible scandal.
Ramon, I don't mean to judge anybody because we don't know the people and the person, so we're not talking about specifics here, but generally speaking, what does it take for someone in a high power, in a powerful place, resign their responsibility and basically put aside their ethics and their integrity and say, I'm going to do this for the person I want elected to be the president, for what I think is right? How does that happen?
Sorry, when you ask from the perspective of how do the leaders get to this level of corrupt?
Yes.
Okay, so I think there's a famous quote, obviously, most people know it, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think one of the senators said it. He said he believes this president or some of these people are just drunk with power, and that's what happens. A lot of the great civilizations had the greatest militaries on earth, but they ended up taking themselves down because of just pure corruption and just lust. I mean, it's an insatiable hunger for power. And at some point, I do believe certain people believe they're above the law, and we know this very well from where we're from. Is that once the government is in full control, the bigger the government, the smaller the person, the smaller the citizen. And so we know that in Egypt, for instance, we have on our IDs, we have our faith, our religions on here, our employment status, our academic, our educational levels, everything's on there. So we do get treated that way based on things that are unfair. Some people, want to be Christian but not have somebody judge them in their career based on their Christianity. And so what you saw here is basically people being judged for things that should not come into play. I personally, I don't mince words about it. I am a conservative Christian, and the IRS really gave me some trouble in the past 2 years. I mean, really bad trouble with a bill that's over $45,000 needlessly. And a lot of people thought, I'm being, conspiracy theory. I'm, having some, fantasy about being targeted for this reason. And other than maybe one news network like Fox News that began this thing, the media didn't want to touch this. And even after the IRS admits they made a mistake, our president says, if it happened. And so I don't know how much more evidence there has to be for people to say, there has to be checks and balances here. If the person who's collecting my taxes wants to punish me, there should definitely be an uprising of some sort, an upswell of anger.
There's a perplexing issue before us here. The Bible is the reason for all moral progress in the world, because the Bible has taught us some incredible teachings, such as we are all created equal, we all answer to one God. And many of the universities that were founded and started in America were founded based on biblical values, and the foundation value of the universities is biblical. These universities have established themselves, have grown, have become the powerhouses that they are now. And now they are producing the nuttiest and most absurd ideas and philosophies. And it's kind of ironic that you have this solid foundation with the solid building blocks to get you up to be 100 years old or 150 years old. And then what you produce today is a kind of like relativism where there's not absolute right and wrong. Hatem, what do you think about the university's role in producing workforce and leaders that are capable of putting aside their values?
Yeah, I think it's very concerning. I think it goes back to something Ramon said earlier, that we are now reaping what we have sown 40 years back. Something started from the 70s, and it's this wave of liberalism and a departure from religious values and a departure from conservative values in our schools, in our universities. It's very difficult for conservative professors to get positions in non-Christian universities. Even the ones that claim to be Christian now are departing. We've got Biola University having an LGBT program. I mean, these are far and away departures from everything we know to be Christian, solid Christian principles. And these universities are ultimately leading to the adults of today that are now taking powerful positions in corporations and in government. So I think that we really do need to reverse this wave of what's going on, beginning with our schools, beginning with the lower levels of our schools and up through the universities. And I think that there are some beacons of Christian thought that are still buried in conservative schools that really need to be grown out, that are truly conservative, that really need to be nourished and grown, and we need to find those and seek them out and really participate and send our children there and really keep them going.
You're watching the Coptic Cafe program. Thank you for being here with us on Logos TV. The phone number here is 818-342-3388. And I'd like to address the blessed viewers to at least give thought to the conversation that we have here. I don't know anyone who is not appalled by the scandal of the IRS targeting any specific groups. But I'd be curious, would anybody be okay with, since it's being done to a group that maybe I don't belong to or you don't belong to, or do we have the sense of urgency that if this happens to one group, it can happen to another? And this being a great country that it is, and the way society has been advancing for the past 250 years almost, it's kind of disheartening to see it backing away from advancing from being a first world country to fall into these kind of corruptions. Have we really gotten to a point, Ramon, where there's no such thing as right and wrong?
No, actually, I think the St. Anthony's quote, just rings so loudly in today's society, where there is actually talk about right and wrong, but I think it's upside down. So, for instance, the gentleman that made a video about a year ago now, and being as distasteful as it may be, it didn't take our government, the president, minutes or maybe hours to get on and publicly demand that this person be found, and how despicable this act was. And we heard about it at the United Nations and at the highest levels of government. When the IRS scandal broke, it's been 2 years. We don't have one name of one person responsible. And so what's right is wrong and what's wrong is right as far as what we pursue. The gentleman from Fox News had his phone tapped for doing a story that they considered possibly maybe espionage. I mean, that is treason. That's punishable by death, by hanging, as a matter of fact. And so they pursued that a media reporter done nothing wrong, and they went to 3 different judges to get a subpoena to go ahead and go after his personal emails, his home personal emails, his phone records, everything else. And yet we had 2 gentlemen in Boston who we were told by Russian intelligence and by FBI intelligence that these people might be potential terrorists, and they were left alone until they actually committed their acts of murder. So why didn't the administration, who found the gentleman who made the video so quickly and arrested him, and found a Fox News reporter who happened to be doing his job and tapped his phone, was not able to find a couple of guys, or as they say, people who are responsible for this? So to me, I don't think it's an accidental act that we're not seeing truth prevail. They're intentionally hiding, suppressing truth, and just sort of pursuing other things that are irrelevant.
Hatem?
Yeah, no, I think one point there is so you heard the video, and the president said, I found out about this just like everybody else through the same media reports that you heard. But there are confirmed reports that the White House Chief Counsel and the White House Chief of Staff were informed of this. And so it's very, very difficult to believe that those 2 would not have reported it to their boss, who is the president. So I think there was an aha moment for the president in that last video. There's also reports of sort of where these offices or where the targeting was occurring in several geographies. And so it wasn't one manager who was sort of overseeing all of them, who may have been, providing this sort of sour direction for his people. But each of them had an individual manager, and they all reported up centrally to a director. So I think that, as we see this unfold, we're going to find out that this really took place at very high levels. Anything that had the word Obama, anything that had the word progressive in it was streamlined, and 401c3 or 501c3 status, or 50, I don't know what the code is.
501c3
was granted almost, within 3 months. There are people who are still waiting 3 years later after having applied for this. So it's very troubling.
This reminds me with Isaiah when he said, "Woe unto those who say to good evil, and to say to evil good." I want to basically to present the blessed viewers that who we vote for and who we put in power matters, and we should really be careful with our own convictions and morals. Adhere to the biblical teachings, and when it comes to our own actions, to act honorably, to have ethics at work, at home, in the church. It's very easy to lie. It's very easy to lie.
I think exactly what Otzek said is, for instance, Ronald Reagan was quoted as saying, and I may paraphrase it here, but he was quoted as saying, there are answers to all of life's problems within the Bible. This kind of maybe some people may say something they don't really mean, but when he spoke this, he didn't speak it publicly. At a big gathering, he spoke this candidly. Didn't have a problem with him, being recorded. But exactly who we vote for, elections have consequences. When the president said, "I want to fundamentally transform this country," I don't know what part of that didn't shake people up and say, why would you want to transform a country you love? You know, if you love your wife, you don't want to transform her. If you have a friend, you don't transform them. You know, and so just that statement alone probably told us a lot about how the future is going to be. And now we're seeing the fruits of that. So he also, ironically, at a graduation about a week or two before the scandal broke, made a statement saying, reject the voices that tell you that there's government tyranny at every corner, lurking at every corner. It's very ironic because government tyranny was just lurking around the corner from that speech, which he made at an all-black college. So I find it just the hypocrisy is at an extremely high level.
Let's move on to the next scandal that I'd like to get your reactions to. But in all of this, I'm pointing out to the fact that the Bible is not contradictory. The Bible does not have a speck of ill advice or foolishness. If you just live with honesty and integrity and adhere to the Bible, you wouldn't have any of these scandals. The next one is video number 2. If we could get clip number 2 ready. This is again Fox News with Sean Hannity and Mark Levin discussing the AP scandal. This is a scandal where the legal department targeted reporters supposedly for leaks. Now we know that national security is at hand and all of that. This is, of course, the number one priority, but it's never been in the history of this country that you go after the reporter who reported the leak. You always try to prosecute the person who leaked the unauthorized information. So let's watch video number 2 together and we'll come back and comment on it.
All right, Mark, let's go for this news story. It broke on Drudge earlier today, and that is the government tapping the AP, their phone records. They've been doing it for months. You got Benghazi, you got the IRS scandal, now we got this invasion into people's privacy. What do you make of it?
First of all, I want you to think about this. Apparently, they tapped 20 lines for the Associated Press, affecting about 100 reporters. You know, I was a chief of staff to an attorney general in the Reagan administration. I can promise you if we had done that, that would be the end of everything. And it's one thing to be doing leak investigations, but that is such a broad attack on a news agency. I've never heard of such a thing. And the fact of the matter is, Sean, that the media need to understand that when some of us are trying to defend the Second Amendment and the Ninth Amendment and the 10th Amendment and the Fourth Amendment and the Fifth Amendment, the Bill of Rights generally, the Constitution generally, the First Amendment, free speech, the First Amendment, religious liberty, and the media throw in with this administration and basically are the Praetorian Guard for this administration, the day would come, and the day has now come, where freedom of the press is under attack. And this is the extent to what we know. There may be more, but the tap, reportedly 20 lines involving 100 reporters and God knows what else that they were doing with the AP is a disgrace. And Eric Holder had to have known about it and had to have approved it.
Well, you got not only you got the freedom of press, but you got freedom of speech. Patriot, Tea Party, Constitution, government waste, fraud and abuse. All of a sudden now you become a target of the IRS. Same with associations here. When you look at the questions that on the IRS case, I guess the question I have is a political question, because I personally don't even think this is political. I think this is a matter of fundamental fairness for the American people and whether or not they're going to care. Because when Benghazi comes up, they drag their feet, they delay, they misinform, then when finally information comes out, then they say it's a long time ago. I would expect in all of these scandals probably the same strategy would be used, no?
This is a matter of big government tyranny is what it is. And the left embraces it, and they have this mentality. It's perfectly fine when somebody else's ox is being gored, but when it's theirs, then suddenly, wait a minute, you're not allowed to do this. This is the problem. The government's getting bigger and bigger, and power's more and more centralized. And Obama, whenever there's a problem, he has these excuses. Well, that's an independent agency. Well, that's low level. Well, they're playing politics. Folks, it's real world. The IRS is out of control. The Department of HHS with Obamacare is out of control. The Agriculture Department with the scandal with the payoffs to different groups is completely out of control. The Interior Department and oil drilling. The government is big, it's bloated, it's getting more and more powerful, and if you believe in liberty, you better start paying attention.
Well, and we better
this
look at
is
the
why
IR
Congress has a job, and they better do it.
Hatem, what's your reaction to this video about the AP scandal that broke out a few days ago?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's shocking. I mean, there are several places where the press is referred to as the fourth branch of government, sort of checks and balances, with the press being there to check the other three branches of government. So this is a serious intrusion on the checks and balances that we have in our Constitution. I think that when, taking folks back to the time of the election in 2008, the words that were used were that the media was fawning over this president. He was a celebrity to them. They were enthralled by him, and it was, a very, very nice relationship with the press. Bring that now to today. I think that the tapping of 100 reporters of their communications. I mean, I think if you're investigating a leak, you tap one reporter. You don't tap 100 reporters. So I think that this was, an effort to really undermine that fourth branch of government. I think I'll say one other thing is there was a meeting held shortly after this scandal came out that was in the Oval. It was in the White House. It was not in the Oval Office, and it was only held with a subset of the press corps that was the liberal set of the press corps. And sure enough, the next day after that meeting came out, rather than hearing about all these scandals, things were a little bit more favorable on the other side. So I think that he and his administration have done a good job up until now of sort of courting the press and making sure that everything is printed as sort of towards him. I think the minute that started to taper off, I think there's been some serious actions taken to help get that back going again. So we really know very little about what the depth of this is, just because of the relationship that the media has with this administration and with democratic administrations in general.
And that's one interesting thing to bring up, Ramon, and that is it's not exactly that the media is very harsh or scrutinizes everything that the administration does, or at least what's going on in the country nowadays. So it's not like there were a lot of enemies, a lot of attacks from the press side. Yet we have this targeting of a narrow subset of the media, namely Fox News and reporters in that organization. Has it ever happened in the history of this country that the president or the administration enjoyed 100% of the media, or is this just
unprecedented? Is probably the best way to describe it. But you notice, Abuna, that it's like that old saying. First they came for the Jews. So this whole attack on the media began really just attack on one media outlet. And you'd think, if you have ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN on your side, you'd be comfortable enough to get your message out. But his administration was not comfortable with just having 99%. They really were upset about Fox News, and they actually waged a war on Fox News and said things like it's not a real news network and things like that. And
is it true that they shopped around for judges to?
Absolutely. Eric Holder, who's supposed to be the top gentleman at the Justice Department, had 3 judges turn him down for a subpoena to get information about James Rosen from Fox News. It was an upstanding character, by the way, and he was smeared throughout this process. And so the fact that you have to go to 3 different federal judges to get your wish shows you how much corruptness and how it runs rampant. And if you notice, Abuna, the media has done a marvelous job for this president, and still he's not able to contain the amount of corruption that's within this administration. If you notice, for instance, our previous president, his grades were leaked. So his transcript somehow leaked in the media. This president's transcripts are watertight. The media doesn't have an ability to have those leak. Abu Ghraib, that happened in Iraq, that leaked. But the fact that we have more dead soldiers in Afghanistan under this administration, we don't even know that people have forgotten there's more wars going on now than there was 8 years ago. and things like that. So when the media decides to pursue stories and they really sort of play up a story like the Catholic Church scandals, things like that, and they ignore real news, the media has a lot of control. And so if the AP thought, you know what, they couldn't come for us, they're going after Fox News, I think the AP just learned that, you know what, the devil has no friends, per se. So, you know, if they watched Fox News get trounced and get, sort of attacked by this president, they're next. You know, if you don't fall in line with the administration's, talking points, you're on deck. So I think they've learned the hard way. And this is completely against Christian principles, because Christ asked the disciples to proclaim truth. He didn't say specifically give them certain points, and just said, go out there and proclaim the truth. And, to show no partiality. And so even in the media, that's how it's supposed to be. And in a democracy, that's how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a vigorous debate of issues. And so that's how Christ never, sort of shut people up for questioning even his authority as Lord and Savior. So the fact that we have a media that's completely one-sided, I think is sort of a result of its own creation.
You're watching the Coptic Cafe program on Logos TV. Thank you for being here with us this evening. And the phone number here is 818-342-3388. We welcome your phone calls, questions, comments to get in on a conversation. Hatem, I know some people who are really turned off. The news is depressing. They're very disappointed at what is going on in the country. And many people shape their views and their votes based on what they hear in the news and get their information in a quick way. So what chance do those people have? And the second question for either you two gentlemen is, what can be done for the average person to get well informed?
Well, but I think they're turned off with good reason. I think that when they see these scandals, clearly you feel like you're you don't have any control, or you don't have any oversight, or any way to check the government. And I think that that's a disservice to the process entirely. I think that people need to understand that their vote does matter. Elections do matter. People we put in office are going to behave based on their previous policies and based on what they say, or we have to make that assumption. And I think that we have to be very diligent and vetting of all of these people before we cast our votes for them. I think one other point is that we need to vote based on conservative principles. We don't vote based on party. There are people in the Republican Party who are pro-homosexuality and promote those policies. Those people don't fall under our definition of conservative, and therefore those people can't just be blanketly elected because they fall under a Republican Party platform. I think that each candidate needs to be taken for what they say, and that their conservative values need to be fully understood before we cast a ballot for them. Now, if we take the approach of just staying home and not doing anything, then we get what we get, which is, where we are today.
Ramon, how can someone, an average person who's got, be it a young professional who's just starting out their life, maybe married, a couple of kids, going to work, responsibility of the home, or a college student who's just busy with exams and all of that. The media does not cover these things. In a couple of years, or 3.5 years, we'll have the presidential elections. All of this will be forgotten. It hasn't been really covered by the national media in the first place. So I almost find it understandable, not excusable, but understandable for someone to show up to the voting booth and say, what's the problem,
Yeah, when I hate to really be a little bold on this and harsh on the statement, but I think people who really only worry about themselves, it's selfishness. So you worry about what affects me personally. So if my career happens to be whatever,
but
right.
that's
right.
not.
So I mean, being informed about society doesn't mean just being informed about what affects you directly.
I don't mean that. I mean,
right.
They're just too busy to pay attention to the news in general. And then
Well, I'll give you an example of when I know somebody who was in that realm, and they were too busy to be up to date on news. And the one time they actually cared is when I talked to them about the fact that they had kids in private school. And I said, do you realize you get zero tax write-off for that, while other people can write off, the strangest things, and that you're paying for 2 spaces in a public school while you're paying your 100% share in somewhere else? And so that's when he got involved, and that's when he said, hey, why am I paying all these taxes for 2 positions in the school district when I have 2 kids in private school? And so that's what I mean is I think people will say that I'm too busy when they believe it doesn't affect them. If I pay, federal income taxes, state income taxes, local sales taxes, DMV taxes, property taxes, and every kind of fee on the freeway and everything else, if I'm comfortable, then I'm not gonna worry about being informed about why I'm paying all these taxes. But again, you go back to biblical principles, and look how simple Christ made it for us as far as what we give sort of to charity, and it's simple 10%. And that's what's ironic is at one point in this country, it wasn't a crime to speak about political issues that affect our country within the church. And it was the tax system with the whole 501c3 and sort of baiting them into, hey, if you want to retain that exemption, then you better keep your mouth shut in church. Because before the 1930s or 20s, the pulpit was a great place to talk about what kind of tyranny is happening. And so what they end up doing is, in the name of a sort of tolerance and equality, they say, or church and state, separation of church and state, which is a fallacy, to say you can't speak about truth from the pulpit. So I think we can't separate our lives and say this is my personal life and this is politics. That's a fairly foolish way to sort of look at these issues as separate entities.
We have just a few minutes left in the program. I want to turn to the last scandal that was in the news, big scandal.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a lot more that we haven't covered.
Yes, there's a lot more that goes on that we don't know. And this one has touched the Coptic Church specifically, and that is the Benghazi debacle. When the attack on the embassy, which resulted in a killing of 4 Americans, one of them is the ambassador to Libya, it was immediately announced that this is because a movie that was made by a Coptic Christian, and I could not believe my ears when I heard the words, because we never hear about a Muslim terrorist or a black rapist or a redneck bank robber. You just hear about a robber, a rapist. There's no label before it. And of course it affected us because we are the Coptic Church. So to say Coptic in the news, and specifically by the president, I was surprised to hear him utter that much details so few hours right after the attack. And today, almost 1 year later, this was back in 9/11, 2012, we're almost, about 8 months later or so, and we learned that this was not the case.
Right.
And that they knew all along that this was an orchestrated, organized Islamic terrorist attack by the fanatics, and yet they shoved this story about a movie that was made by a Coptic Christian down everybody's throat. Let's watch clip number 3, and I'll come back and get your reaction to it, please.
Well, to me, this is very simple. The American people, I would think, deserve the truth. The families of these 4 dead Americans deserve the truth, not lies that were spun after the fact to protect themselves politically. I think we deserve the truth about the IRS. The press, I would think, would want to know the truth about why they're tapping the phones of reporters. It seems to me Democrats would want the answers to that, wouldn't they?
Well, look at this Benghazi matter. We all know, even people who are paying half attention, that there were 12 iterations of the talking points. Why are the talking points important? Because that was the sheet of music the administration was going to sing off of, whether it was in front of Congress, whether it was to we the people, whether it was in any other forum, and it was a flat-out lie. They didn't work at this to try and get the facts straight. They worked at this to try and redact the facts. And the facts were that they knew it was an al-Qaeda-related group that attacked our compound, that murdered our ambassador and 3 other men, and they're still lying about it. Obama today is still talking about a video which had absolutely nothing to do with it. And so the question is, are we going to have a select investigative committee where resources are focused and drag these people through subpoenas? And if they don't honor them, hold them in contempt? And if they lie under oath, prosecute them for perjury? Are we going to keep chasing our tails on this?
You're watching the Coptic Cafe program. Thank you for being here with us. The phone number here is 818-342-3388. We have Mike on the phone. Mike, welcome to the Coptic Cafe program. What's on your mind?
I just want to say that the youth are being brainwashed by what they're watching from the media, and this is going around the school. This is rampant, and among the teachers too. And they just come on the youth, and they begin to tell the youth, that Republicans are bad, and Republicans are now seen as bad, and they're now being, run out of the offices, which I believe is crazy.
Michael, how old are you?
I'm 16.
16. God bless you for paying attention, being interested in this. And I just want to comfort you with this thought. The Bible has never taught us to look for the world for answers or for comfort. So we are doing our best here because we believe in the second coming. We believe in the resurrection of Christ. We greet one another and say Christ is risen. And we know the truth. We love the Bible. We love our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And all we are trying to do is share this message with others in the world if they should accept it. With that, let me ask you this. How do you react, or how does one react when a teacher in a classroom with captive audience starts spewing hate messages against biblical teachings, basically, or people who have conservative ideas?
Sorry. What was that? Repeat that. I didn't get the last part.
Can you share with me what happens when a teacher starts talking bad about conservative ideas, traditional families?
Right. When a teacher starts to speak bad about conservative ideas and things like this, the students will begin to support the teacher, and maybe the one or two Republicans left in the class, because I come from Los Angeles. It's a very democratic city, and the people around me are very democratic. They're most of them are Democrats, and so most of the teachers are Democrats. And I specifically go to a Catholic private school, and they themselves are mostly Democratic Catholic, and so they'll begin to just shoot down on me whenever I speak for my Republican, beliefs. And when I start to speak about Islam and it's destruction and it's hate and all this different things and things that concern gays, and how in the Bible it tells us that gays are not, that being gay is not good. The teacher, I'm in a Catholic school, and they'll just come and start shooting me down for their democratic views.
Michael, God bless you. I want you to know that John the Baptist was a lone voice in the desert, but he was not the wrong voice. So to be an only voice, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're the wrong voice. So God bless you. Keep on going, and I hope you're offering your message with love. And also, if I may give you a small advice, please try to be specific with your vocabulary, and don't broad brush a group of people. If you're speaking about extremism, then do say that, the extremists. That way your arguments can be taken as valid and not as you are generalizing. And I invite you to watch the second hour of the program tonight. We're going to discuss something that has to do with the high schools here in state of California, which might start taking effect nationwide. So thank you for calling, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
I want to say, Michael, you're much wiser and more aware than I was at your age. So God bless you,
yes,
and
indeed.
Stay active.
Indeed. Hatem, your reaction to the video we just saw.
Yeah, so I think that anybody who is a Coptic Christian who is sitting and watching this and doesn't take a personal offense to this is not paying attention. I think that this was a premeditated, thought-through effort to blame the Coptic person and the association with the Coptic Church in the place of blaming their own self and the administration's failures to protect its embassy. And I think we've talked about this before. where should the repercussions fall back? Should they fall back against us and against our foreign policy, or should they fall back against this individual, the group that he belongs to, and whatever the churches and the infrastructure are at the time? So for those who do belong to the Coptic Church, who are seeing this and cast a vote for this president and this administration, this is what you voted for. I'd like to also say that the talking points that were done when they sent the Deputy Secretary of State. First of all, the deputy was sent. It wasn't the Secretary of State, because something so blatant couldn't be directly pinned on the Secretary of State, so they sent the Deputy Secretary of State. And when these talking points were scrubbed, they weren't added information. It's not that they're refining the information. I think Mark Levin alluded to this. They didn't add things to correct the information. They took things out, lest they should be exposed, or lest they should be brought to the
Our time has come to an end. Thank you for watching the Coptic Cafe program here on Logos TV. And I leave you with this message, that we believe in the risen Christ, and our actions here on earth matter. So please try to be ethical, try to be honorable, resist the easiness of behaving in a dishonest way or in a dishonorable way, because we have to give an answer just like everyone else who will give an answer when our Lord returns. You've been watching a Coptic Cafe program. Thank you for being here with us. evening and welcome to the Coptic Cafe program on Logos TV. Thank you for watching. I'm Father Joseph, your host. Our phone number here is 818-342-3388. I invite you to call in and share with us on a conversation with your questions and comments. Last May 9th of 2013, the state of California witnessed yet another attack on traditional values and family values. The California State Assembly passed a bill numbered AB 1266 and passed the bill with a vote of 45 to 24. This bill basically simplified. It says students will be allowed to use public school restrooms and locker rooms in respect to the gender with which they identify, not the biological sex with which they were born. This means that this bill has already passed the Assembly. It still has to go to the Senate floor and be signed by the governor. Basically it will allow children in high school to go to the facilities of their choice, the bathroom of their choice. Boys can enter the girls' bathrooms and vice versa, and they can participate in the sports that were once saved for a specific gender. So boys can join girls' teams and girls can join boys' teams, and you can also shower in the opposite facility. For Christians, and as a father myself having 2 children in a public school system, this was very disturbing. I found it to be an appalling move on the part of the legislatures here in California to further a very narrow specific agenda. This was definitely not a problem where the majority were facing, but just a few very small number of cases. I'd like to call your attention to this bill that is taking place, and every time I share the news with somebody, the first thing they ask me, Father, can anything be done? I will try to simplify the process as we go along with the guests on the show tonight, and we'll watch a little video that will show you how a bill becomes law here in California. But before we get into all of that, let me welcome my guests this evening. Ramon Tadros, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us, Abuna.
And Hatem Tadros, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure.
I don't know if you gentlemen were aware of the revving up for this bill. There were definitely a couple of websites that were alerting Christians about the coming of this bill. It was first discussed in a committee, and then the committee passed it. It went to the assembly floor, and the assembly passed it. Ramon, what's your take?
I think the fact that we're already at this stage where it's already passed, and we're asking what can we do, it's a little too late at this point. If people have not been involved since the last couple elections, California has what we call a supermajority, which means in our political spectrum here means that one party can do anything it wants and not even worry about a veto, which they don't have to worry about because the governor is also Democrat. So anything they ram through, which we're looking at now, essentially goes in being unchecked. So we don't even have the checks and balances that we would normally have with at least even a 50-50 or 60-40. It's essentially anything can be rammed down the people's throats. But again, because we've let the schools go so far, this is just another step in the slippery slope where this would have been unheard of 40 years ago. Today, it's just another bill. Really didn't see much media, reporting on this. And we've heard a lot of stories that would actually dwarf this story. We heard a story just a couple weeks ago that a homosexual couple had an 8-year-old that actually had a sex operation to go from a boy to being a girl, and there was no outcry from society. So we've sort of come to this stage, slowly, but if we did our job as Christians and we voted against it and we tried to petition against it, then we can say, I fought the good fight, And so, we're going to hopefully be able to stand in front of the Lord on the last day and say, I tried. But if we didn't, then hopefully there's some remorse at this point, and we can get people who didn't see it to start waking up.
Definitely, I'd like to point out to the blessed viewers that our vote matters, and this is what happens when you put specific people in power. This assembly bill was championed by the first homosexual teacher that came out in 1975 and was fighting the school system since 1975 for gay rights for teachers and students. And this bill is number 12 on the list of the GLBT community, where they are trying to streamline and generalize deviant behavior, homosexuality, and make it as a normal activity. And we see that in this bill here. Before we go further, I just would like to assure the viewers that it is not the intent of this program to offend anybody or to come across as arrogant or judgmental. As I see the comments on the bill when it passed, and some parents were in utter tears and shock, but the blogs that came back condemning these parents as racists and bigotists and backward people that don't deserve to live in a modern society. The vicious attacks that I saw on the internet following the vote on the bill was just uncalled for. So I'm appealing to the viewer to please think about this topic with an open mind and with an open heart. Let's not align ourselves with any kind of political party or put ego aside. Maybe the topic doesn't interest you. Maybe you don't have to worry about it because your children are out of school or you don't have children yet. We can't, as Christians, we can't be bystanders to see evil spreading. And I say evil and condemn the behavior simply because our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ taught us this. St. Paul said that this is one of the things that will keep you from getting into the kingdom of heaven. It is not up for debate. I don't know how Christians explain away the homosexual behavior. We are not haters. We are not evil, we are not judgmental. We simply adhere to the teachings of the Bible. And St. Paul could have very easily left out this one act from the list of the things that will not get you into the kingdom of heaven. If indeed practicing this kind of deviant behavior was not going to keep you from heaven. So the fact that it is in the Bible, in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, let's be fair and honest. Kindness and feelings and having a heart for someone you may know or some close friends that you know, and they are kind people, they are good people. Let's not let the heart overrule the Bible. Hatem, what's your reaction to this bill?
Well, I mean, I think on its face, it appears that it gives everybody equality and that, people of one gender are equal to another gender, but this is another case of the poison being in with the honey in the spoon. So I think that if you read this bill, all it has to do with, and really all of the gay rights issues all have to do with the preference of a person and how they choose to have sex. And I think that interjecting this in a level at younger and younger ages is quite detrimental. Just reading from the text of the bill here, it says it is the policy of the state that elementary and secondary school classes and courses, including non-academic and elective classes, be conducted such and such and such and such. So the target is elementary and secondary school. They're starting very, very young, and the text of the bill, departs from the absolute truth. It is an absolute truth that some people are born male and some people are born female. That absolute truth is thrown out the window, and it completely is founded on how that person decides to associate themselves or how they call gender identity. which we know is, something that we learn from our mother and or father. This again strikes at the policy of adoption of gays. If somebody has a mother and a mother, for instance, growing up in a home, and it's a boy, how do they learn to become a man? Similarly, how does a woman who has two, or a girl who has two fathers learn to be a woman? So I think this really is a departure from absolute truth and going back to this relativist frame of thinking that we know can be so destructive.
Yeah, I want you to follow this logic, please, and comment. And I invite the viewers to please call in because this is very important. The phone number here is 818-342-3388. Let's follow the logic. The reason this bill came through was the fact that there were some transvestite kids who maybe a boy felt like he's not a boy, he feels like he's a girl. And when he goes to the bathroom, he felt uncomfortable going in the boys' bathroom because he thinks he's a girl, he should be going to the girls' bathroom. So this entire bill and the entire process, as we will see how this bill becomes law, was made for a very small number of kids, male and female, who just felt a kind of awkward or did not feel comfortable to do this. So now they open the gates, and it depends on how you feel that day, because the way the bill is written, there's no requirements of anything. This can literally be decided overnight. A kid can go to church and say to the officials, I feel this today. And the very next day he can change or she can change, and it can become cyclical like this. So my question to the blessed viewers, to you, and to anyone who has any kind of power to influence the outcome of this bill, and hopefully to kill it and not get it to the governor's desk, and even if it does get to the governor's desk, that the governor does not sign it. My question is this: how about the majority of young boys and girls who will feel very uncomfortable for having an opposite natural sex person in their own shower or in their own bathroom? What about the ease and comfort of the majority? So we are doing all of this because person A is not comfortable, but when we come with this bill, we have 2,300 persons offended, but you be quiet, you don't be offended. Ramon, how can this happen?
It's a one-way street, Abuna. I think there was a gentleman who was the son of a congressman, and I think he was openly homosexual. And he went on a news network, or they wanted to interview him, so he came on the news network, and they began to tell him, don't you feel like your father's a bigot? It's the fact that you're openly homosexual. And as soon as he started defending his father, they cut off the interview. And so this is not about equality or tolerance. Tolerance is not a Christian virtue. Love, honesty, justice, these are Christian virtues. Tolerance just is a working principle that you have to use in a diverse community. But I think tolerance and equality are things that have become sort of the foundational cornerstones that society is now trying to trump as being the most significant and important. So God didn't create us all equal, and in many ways He created man and woman, and we have different features and we have different abilities. And so this idea that everybody's 100% equal goes directly against what God created. And so I think when I slightly disagree with Otsek, even if it was the majority that required this, I don't think necessarily the majority or the minority dictates what truth is. We know what truth is, and so the fact that it's sort of gone this far, where a person can say, today I feel like a female, today I feel like a male, shows how insane the world has gotten as far as morality is concerned.
No need to disagree with me. I think we're on the same line. My point is we have the majority, and we have morality, and we have the biblical principles on our side, and yet bills like this are being shoved through Hatem. What about, for me, I have a young boy. He can be in the shower after the sports class, and then a girl is walking in. I don't want that to happen, and I think the majority of Californians if they woke up and knew what's going on with the legislatures and the new laws that are being passed, many people will be very uncomfortable with something like that.
Absolutely. I think, Abuna, that it's difficult enough to be a child and to be a young person and grow up and to begin to understand the differences in gender and what the relationship with the opposite sex should be and what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. And so to interject that knowledge or that force feed it into children that age completely confuses the process and makes it all the more difficult. I think there's added struggle to maintain a sense of purity and a sense of ability to be able to conduct yourself in that specific situation. I think that it really is a disservice to the youth who every year increasingly have been exposed to sex at a lesser and a younger and younger age. Several forces, including the media and the internet and everything in that regard, but definitely the law here is going to be a contributor to that.
It's amazing that what gave us the concept of all humans are created equal was the Bible.
Right.
Before the Bible, humans were not treated equal. It goes back to even the Old Testament. Men were treated different than women. And throughout history, men of certain color were abused by other men of certain colors. And it wasn't until the time of the Lord Jesus Christ came that he taught us that all humans are equal. This is a biblical a foundational teaching. It's a principle that is deeply seated in the Bible. Now we take the teaching and throw away the Bible and say the Bible is racist.
And I think a lot of people have sort of watered down this sin, and maybe that's what makes it easier to sort of accept it. If I can quote St. John Chrysostom on the issue, he didn't speak delicately about this issue. He was very bold, and he said that I say to you that homosexuality is worse than murder, and it would be better to die than to live in such dishonor as far as that type of lifestyle openly and with pride. He says a murderer only separates the soul from the body, whereas homosexuality destroys the soul inside and the body. So there's nothing, and I quote, there is nothing, absolutely nothing more mad or damaging than this perversity. And what I think what's happening with the youth is they say, well, this is just like lying or cheating or stealing. Why do we sort of trumpet so much more, not understanding that no society has ever survived this? And for the first time in humankind, not only is this now behavior sort of rampant, but it's celebrated. So where in the time of Sodom and Gomorrah, when God destroyed the entire earth, at that time, homosexual marriage was not accepted. It was still a sexually deviant behavior. And so I'm amazed, not only the fact that it's happening, but the way that it's being accepted. So that teaches us that when the devil presents us something in a very intelligent way, it's much easier to accept, and that's what's been happening. It's been touted as equality. So rather than look at the victim of this evil, horrible sin that destroys entire societies and civilizations, we sort of forgot the victim in this, and that being, if you're going to teach about homosexuality, let's have the conversation in schools. Let's talk about the suicide rates being 7 to 10 times more in homosexual males and females. Let's talk about the STDs. Let's have the conversation. But to say, let's talk about equality and leave all the truth out of the situation means you're creating more victims. People who are dying from this disease, spiritually, physically. And I have some stats we'll share later about how much money is being spent on this versus other diseases that could really use some funding.
You're watching the Coptic Cafe program on Logos TV. Thank you for being here with us this evening. The phone number here is 818-342-3388. I'd like to get clip number 4 ready, please, video number 4. You're watching the show tonight. We're discussing a new bill that's coming up in California, but I understand this program goes national and even international. But California sometimes is a trendsetter. What goes in California, other states blindly adopt it, and they put it up to votes, and if the progressives are for it and okay with it, then it starts spreading throughout the country. I'm going to show a video right now which teaches us how a bill becomes a law. And right now we're about in the middle of the way for this bill to become the law of the land. May 9th was just clearing the first major hurdle, and it is expected to be smooth sailing from here on, simply because all the branches of the California state are of the same political party, namely Democratic. The Democratic Party owns the Assembly, and owns the Senate, and owns the governor. Therefore, anything that goes with the agenda of the platform of the Democratic Party, it's expected to sail through. And so we shouldn't be surprised about that. But let's watch the video together, and then we'll come back and discuss some more.
Hi there, I'm Assemblymember Rudy Bermudez in Sacramento in front of the State Capitol building. This is where ideas become law in California. Do you have an idea that could make our state a better place? In California, anyone can suggest an idea for a law. In fact, I'd like to hear about your ideas and show you how an idea can become a law. The process is like a long trip. So come with me and my friend Bill for a few minutes.
Hey yo, I'm Bill.
And we'll take you on a ride and show you how an idea becomes a law.
First, let's check out where we're going. Laws are made in the big house. I'm talking about the California State Capitol. The players in the big house are the Assembly, the State Senate, and the Governor. The Assembly and the State Senate make up the state legislature. There are 80 Assembly members and 40 state senators in California.
Our state is divided into 80 assembly districts and 40 senate districts. Each assembly member or state senator represents one district. That means you have one assembly member and one state senator.
If you have an idea for a law, tell your state senator or assembly member. If one of them likes your idea, they will author it, and your idea becomes a bill.
Then the bill must be sent to Legislative Council. Legislative Council is a group of lawyers who work for the legislature. These attorneys can take your bill and write it in legal language. Come on, follow me. To make things official, the bill has to be sent to the chief clerk's desk in the assembly chambers. This is where the bill is assigned a number. This is what we call putting a bill across the desk. My bill, Assembly Bill 96, would change the way we classify schools with low test scores. Schools titled low-performing schools would instead be called high-priority schools. The idea for this bill came from teachers who felt the negative label hurt all students, no matter how hard they tried or how much they improved.
Because Assemblymember Bermudez's bill is about education, the next stop is the Assembly Education Committee. The Education Committee is made up of a smaller group of Assembly members who study the pros and cons of the bill. After doing their homework on the bill, yeah, Assembly members have homework too, the committee holds a meeting called a hearing.
Right now, I'm in one of many committee rooms where hearings are held at the state capitol. At a committee hearing, anyone can tell an assembly member what they think about a bill. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Here I am at the Education Committee introducing my bill. Let's listen up. This bill would change the terminology of a low-performing school, which is a school that ranks low, a score of 5.
Now it's time for the public to speak up. Let's listen to some of AB 96 supporters.
I respectfully request an aye vote.
Madam Chair and members, Mike Weimer, California Federation of Teachers, in support. We believe that this change in reference is more than just cosmetic because it focuses attention on aid as opposed to punishment. We'd ask for your aye vote.
Erica Hoffman on behalf of the Los Angeles Unified School District. Changing the terminology to high priority for these schools literally focuses on what these schools are. They are our highest priority, and we believe this to be important. Thank you.
We have a motion, we have a second. Are there other comments or questions on this issue? Hearing none, Ms. Rupert, call the roll.
The Education Committee votes.
Goldberg. If the bill gets voted down in committee, it crashes and burns.
Cone.
But AB 96 gets enough committee votes.
And my bill passes.
Garcia.
If a bill requires the state to spend some money, it must also pass a roadblock called the Appropriations Committee. The Appropriations Committee must okay any bill that requires the state to spend cash.
Fortunately, AB 96 missed that roadblock. The state will not have to spend any money to enact my bill. Next stop, my bill travels to the Assembly floor, where I talk to all 80 Assembly members and try and convince them that AB 96 would make a great law. Here I go again.
Assembly Bill 96 by Assemblymember Bermudez, an act relating to schools.
Mr. Bermudez, you may open on that item.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the Academic Performance Index, API, is a statewide ranking system that measures school performance.
Once Assemblyman Bermudez gets done introducing his bill, that's when the fireworks start. Assemblywoman Jackie Goldberg really likes the bill, but Assemblyman Ray Haynes isn't a fan. Check out what they have to say.
Thank you very much, Ms. Goldberg.
I asked for an aye vote not because there is any sugar-coated pill or any panacea to any of these problems. But please do not just continue to believe that public humiliation is a very important motivating factor. Public humiliation depresses people, makes it harder to recruit teachers into areas, and it makes young people believe that they are not smart enough to learn. I don't believe this will change a lot, but it'll change a little, and it'll change it in the right direction. I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Haynes.
Every single time we protect the adults that are failing those children, we fail those children. We do not insist, when we do not insist that those adults actually do their job, when we try to make excuses for them, when we say that because these kids are poor, those adults don't have to work as hard, because those kids grow up in a bad situation, those adults don't have to work as hard, when we say that, gee whiz, we understand you have a lot of obstacles, you don't have to do as good as somebody who lives in my neighborhood, we fail those kids. We fail those kids. And if we start turning around the language and try to make somebody who is doing a bad job, and I'm not talking about the kids here, I'm talking about the adults. We are trying to make the adults feel better about what they're doing, and we ought not do that. We ought to hold them accountable for what they're doing. We ought to vote no on this bill.
Is there any further debate or discussion on this particular matter? If not, Mr. Bermudez, do you want to close on this item?
If you want to encourage children to excel, then you will vote on this bill, and you will support funding education at its appropriate levels. You will then further support the recruitment of teachers statewide who are credentialed, and we will then make the greatest impact on children's lives. I request an aye vote.
Having all debate cease, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote.
If this bill made the state cough up some cash, it would need a 2/3 vote to pass. In the Assembly, that's 54 votes.
But remember, my bill requires no cash, so it only needs a simple majority, which is 41 votes to pass. AB 96 passed with 53 ayes and just 22 nays. But this trip isn't over yet.
Now the bill goes to the state Senate, where it goes through a similar process. AB 96 was approved in the Senate Education Committee, and then went for a full vote of the state Senate, where it passed, no problem.
But there's one more pit stop for my bill. It has to get past the governor. Once a bill goes to the governor, he can go in 3 directions. 1, he can sign your bill into law. 2, he can do nothing, and your bill will automatically become a law. Or 3, he can veto your bill, which means your bill dies. The governor signed AB 96 into law. Now, schools that need a little extra help will be called high priority schools and will get more respect.
Okay, let's recap this ride. First, the legislator authors your idea. It goes to ledge council and is written in legal language. To make things official, it must take a ride across the desk to the chief clerk's office. Then the bill cruises to policy committee. If the bill requires the state to spend money, it must make a detour to the appropriations committee. Then the bill speeds to the assembly floor for a vote. If it passes, the bill goes to the Senate for a similar process. First to the policy committee, possibly to the appropriations committee, and then to the Senate floor for a vote. If the bill is able to get past all of those roadblocks, then it drives to the governor's office. Again, the governor can sign the bill into law. He can do nothing and the bill automatically becomes law, or he can veto, which means the bill crashes and burns.
Welcome back to the Coptic Cafe program. Thank you for watching this evening. The phone number here is 818-342-3388. And I'd like to invite all the blessed viewers who can do something about this to please do something. In the program, we are very limited with the resources and what can be done here, but I'm hoping to use Coptic Cafe as a launch pad for some kind of effort, at least locally, to make people aware, so that when this bill comes up in the Senate and it has a new number, it's not going to be AB 1266 anymore, it's going to be SB something, then maybe we can have some efforts, call the senators, let them know how you feel, and also apply any kind of pressure we can on Governor Brown, the governor of the state of California. I also want to alert our young people who are watching the program tonight. This is an excellent example to show you that we don't look at school for things to imitate. Not everything that is done in school is done according to the Bible or according to Christian principles. And they can do whatever they want, but when you know what the Bible teaches and you hang on to the teachings you receive from the church, you receive from the spiritual messages you listen to, young and old, then you know what is right and what is wrong is wrong. We're not going to look to the world or to the school to teach us what the Christian behavior should be. So as you can see from the video, this is midway. It passed the committee. It doesn't need to go to the appropriation committee, because it supposedly does not involve any money spent, and then it goes on to the Senate. Gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thank you for being here this evening. I want to share with you a quote I found on the blogs after the announcement of the passing of the bill, and some upset mother was writing and voicing her disapproval. And she said that we should go back to the teachings of Jesus Christ and remember that the beautiful values that this country was founded on. This is the response she got. Pretty sure when Jesus comes back, he will be embracing the transgender children who have been cast aside and labeled as evil. The Jesus I know spent his days washing the feet of prostitutes and dining with the most hated people. What do you say?
I think the verse that Otsek mentioned earlier, woe to them that call evil good and good evil. And again, these transgender kids, if they do happen to be members of society, are a product of a beginning. We have to look at the origination of evil in that. And what do we expect children to be when we provide them with examples of adults that promote something that is so evil? If I can give some examples of what the schools are pushing. The First Lady has a program to fight obesity, which I think is very noble on its face. The idea of saying, let's redesign menus across America. And she was quoted as saying, Americans are, quote, programmed by taste and advertising to eat many things that the government and health professionals know are not healthy. And she said it's time for a reprogramming of personal tastes. And so, and she again said, we ought to serve less of what the customers ignorantly want and more of what they should have. And if this doesn't scare you to death, as far as the government knowing what is good for you and what is bad for you, knowing that that bill is by the government, and the fact that one of the excuses, the things they fall back on is, hey, this obesity issue, which I agree is a problem and it should be addressed in a proper fashion, leads to higher healthcare costs. And so, can I give Otsek some stats about
quickly, sure.
Yes, real quickly, where we are with the costs, if we're going to talk about what's unhealthy for America. In America, the federal government spends 21 times more on AIDS as we do on cancer. This is, again, 2% of the population that are affected with HIV, AIDS, and we spend on them 21 times more than we do on cancer. We spend 78 more times money on AIDS than we do on heart disease, which the First Lady is concerned about, heart disease and obesity. And anti-stroke funds also are part of the disease that don't get much money. AIDS gets 97 times more money than stroke funding. The New York Post, which is no conservative bastion by any means, reported that the Ryan White Act mandates taxpayer handouts of HIV and AIDS victims to be $1.2 billion per year. And so we have no remotely similar program for victims of any other disease. While, in 1983, 1983, we only had 1,500 cases of AIDS. 1,500 across this country of 300 million, which has doubled every year since then. So when you talk about taxpayers and what the cost of a person who's infected with an STD, it's a much more burdensome on the system than obesity or any other disease combined. But yet, since again they get to frame the narrative, we are now seeing French fries replaced with apples. And I don't mind eating healthy, but I prefer freedom above all things. So if I'm eating against my will, to have somebody take out the salt against my will, or limit my soda size to 16 ounces, but I can buy 2 of them, this is ridiculous why we let children die of, again, higher suicide rate. Out of only 2% of the population, they have 61% of all STDs in society. So let's focus on the victim, what happens to them, and I think a lot of these bills go away just with truth.
Hatem, it seems like there is a lot of, I'm hesitant to say the word hate, from the homosexual groups towards Christians specifically, because they view us as a great threat. We're practically the last standing soldier that's standing in their way. And their attack on us is pointing the finger, accusing us to be bigots, and shame on you, you should be tolerant, and you should be accepting. But turn the situation around. They are doing the exact thing they are complaining from the Christians, in that they are not tolerant of Christians, nor are they tolerant of Christian values. And they want to shove their ideology on the Christians, and they want to silence the Christians. Everything they accuse the Christians of trying to do, they themselves are employing in the process. And yet, an average mind citizen or an average mind Christian may not see this hypocrisy on the part of the homosexual groups. And they stand side by side with them and say, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with this behavior?
And I think, Abuna, therein lies the danger. I think that we in our own societies sort of are incompletely committed to this issue. I think that it is more about getting Christianity to bend backwards in order to accept these people, and to change our own beliefs in order to allow anything at the cost of tolerance. To the lady who responded in the comments, I would say Christ dined with sinners, and he associated with tax collectors, and he did this all throughout the Bible with a purpose. The purpose was not that Christ himself was a sinner, and so he sat with these people to associate with them. The purpose was, what I will do is associate with you in order to express to you the light, or to let you see the light, to let you see the error of the ways. I think the verse Otzek had mentioned earlier is in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, when it says that, do you not know that such and such and such and such, and it included the word homosexuals in that translation. And there are some people on the left who had said, the Bible doesn't always use that word, they use the word effeminate at times. Do you not know that the effeminate shall not inherit the kingdom of heaven? And this actually goes against their own purpose, because this would be a higher standard or a higher threshold to overcome. So these are people who are not even practicing homosexuality, but are practicing a way of living a gender, or having a quote-unquote gender identity that is different than what they were given or created naturally or biologically. And so it's actually allowing for a higher threshold, that, it goes back to the verses that say that if a man wears women's clothing, that this is an abomination. It speaks directly to the continuity of the Old Testament to the New Testament, and saying that this behavior is completely and entirely rejected.
You're watching the Coptic Cafe program. Thank you for being here with us. Please call 818-342-3388 if you have any questions or comments. We look for your involvement as well to see what can you do, how can you help this effort to stop this from becoming the law. There's already a law on the books that was passed a couple of years back, went through the same process, the assembly, the state assembly, the state senators, and then signed by the governor, which allows schools to pull a 13-year-old away from school, take him off campus for some counseling if the kid showed any kind of signs of disapproving or not accepting homosexuals or anything. They have a law that they can remove this kid from the school site, take him for counseling for 2 to 3 hours, and returning the kid back to school without the notification of the parents. Doing this behind the parents' back. Essentially, the government is saying, we know better. We say, shame on you. We Christians raise our kids in a certain way. Don't interfere with the raising of our children. That's not the role of the government. Ramon, why do the homosexual groups hate Christians?
Because the Christians stand for truth, and truth exposes the sin, and so it stands directly against the evil that's being perpetrated. I think political correctness is the main weapon of cultural Marxism, if you will, and the idea that basically you either agree with us or stay silent, and it's been very effective. And one bit of advice that I would personally like to say is, people have to differentiate between a struggling homosexual person, like the people that Otsakan had talked about, that Christ dined with, repentant sinners, or even struggling sinners that are trying to find truth and trying to find their way, versus institutionalized, agenda-driven folks who have to be battled with every force, every ounce of effort within us, because it's not the poor kids who are struggling with homosexuality or single individuals, but it's these groups that they're agenda-driven. For instance, in Germany now, which people, again, things that we think are never going to happen, things that we think, I'd like to see this happen. In Germany now, homeschooling is illegal. As a matter of fact, there was a family that was trying to get asylum here. Unfortunately, they were denied asylum, but they could not homeschool their child, which means the only means of education for that child, and any child in Germany now, is through the public education system. And so we see where this is going. And I know that President just a couple months ago talked about moving the educational curriculum or the academic year a year even sooner. So let's not start at kindergarten. Let's make preschool mandatory. So they don't just want your kids; they want them sooner. They want to use this propaganda and shove it down their throats, and not tell them, for instance, that out of the 1 million people that have been infected with AIDS since 1983, 600,000 have died. More than half of them have died. So it's really about hiding the truth, and Christianity sort of sheds the truth. So that's why I think they're in direct contrast.
Washington or Lincoln, I don't remember who said that teach the children, so you wouldn't find it necessary to teach the adults. But I don't think that's what he meant by teaching the children.
Yeah, I don't think it's
we have Gregory on the line. Gregory, thank you for calling the Coptic Cafe program. What's on your mind?
Hi, I just wanted to say about the boy-girl thing and the bisexual part in the locker room where people can go in if they feel like a girl one day or a boy next. I just find that very perverted. And I know that this is wrong and how people almost 3 times my age can't. I just find me being a student in junior high and being in the locker room changing, it would be very awkward and very offending, and I just find it very perverted.
Gregory, thank you for calling. God bless you. Stay alert and follow the message. The school doesn't necessarily have the right things to do, so that's why we don't imitate what we see at school. And I hope you speak with your friends when it's appropriate, with love always. This is a Christian way. Thank you for calling, Gregory. What do you do to someone like that?
No, I think I'm quite reassured by the calls that we've been getting of women. I think the kids this day and age hopefully are smarter, and it sounds like they're much more aware than.
Yeah. Also alarming that we have a call from a Catholic school, and yet they are embattling this. You know, the Bible gave us the best code for human dealings with one another. And the Bible gave us the 10 Commandments. and taught us that there's a creator who gave us the greatest moral code on earth. And this is a code that furthered societies and made it possible for Western civilization, for modern science, for all of that. How can we explain that we take the fruit and the outcome of the perseverance, the martyrs, the bloodshed, and people died to protect this Bible message and give it to us today to speak about true freedom, to speak about good and evil. And yet, when we are here today in this society, we see all this secularism around us.
I think we have to start hoping for, and I really think people underestimate how many true Christians are in the world. There's a lot of great stories that you'll never hear about. There's a lot of stories of courageous young men and women. And I mean, that's evidenced by the fact that almost 100,000 Christians are slaughtered every year for the name of Christ, and we never hear about any of them. If you look at the Time magazine's 100 most important people of the year, I think most of them are insignificant within the realm of morality. So I think when you start seeing people like Saint Abenob, 12-year-olds, when you start seeing people like Saint George, who took a decree from the king and ripped it apart, when he decided this is against what I believe, my faith and my God, I'll no longer obey your orders. I think at some point we have to say, when's enough? And are we going to wait till they walk into the church and say, you shall perform a homosexual ceremony, or you will be, again, are they going to threaten us with removing our tax-exempt status, or are they going to go even further and punish and imprison people? What are we going to wait for to sort of react? And I think that's where every person has to sort of do some soul searching and say, I'm not going to wait till it happens to me. I think Dennis Prager, we always like to at least give him one quote on the show. He says,
he has a quote.
Okay, good. So 2 quotes.
He
likes to say that an indication of wisdom is how much we can feel something that somebody else goes through without going through it ourselves. So let's not wait till our child, our friend, goes through this, God forbid, commits suicide or has this psychological confusion of what they're being bombarded with at schools. But let's sort of try to stop the problem as a whole before it touches me personally.
Okay, I'd like to roll clip number 6, video number 6, and I don't want the viewers to be depressed by this. By no means is this the or the intent of the program. It is simply to make you aware. These things are happening. Unfortunately, they are not covered by the mainstream media. They are negligible. Cover what? Is homosexuality still an issue? Really? Are there people against that still? Making the issue sound like it's so nonchalant and so negligible, how little you are to care about these things. But that's in fact not the truth, because the majority of the people in this country are still believers and still believe in Christian values. So I want to encourage you to stand up for the Bible teaching. When you are sitting in a church, pay attention to the message. Pay attention to the depth of the teachings of Christ and how it ultimately changes our lives, so we are not able to do a single unethical task. Couple that with great politicians, elected leaders who can champion your message. It truly your vote does matter. So I'd like you to watch this next clip. This is one of the great orators of our modern time, known as the president of great orator, President Ronald Reagan. This is a tribute to him, and let's watch this video together and listen to his message in the video.
Someone asked me whether I was aware of all the people out there who were praying for the president. And I had to say, yes, I am. I felt it. I believe in intercessionary prayer. But I couldn't help but say to that questioner after, that sometimes when he was praying, he got a busy signal. It was just me in there ahead of him. I think I understand how Abraham Lincoln felt when he said, I have been driven many times to my knees by the overwhelming conviction that I had nowhere else to go. Now, I realize it's fashionable in some circles to believe that no one in government should encourage others to read the Bible. That we're told that we'll violate the constitutional separation of church and state established by the Founding Fathers in the First Amendment. The First Amendment was not written to protect people and their laws from religious values. It was written to protect those values from government tyranny. I've said that we must be cautious in claiming God is on our side. I think the real question we must answer is, are we on His side? No matter where we live, we have a promise that can make all the difference. A promise from Jesus to soothe our sorrows, heal our hearts, and drive away our fears. He promised there will never be a dark night that does not end. Our weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. He promised if our hearts are true, His love will be as sure as sunlight. And by dying for us, Jesus showed how far our love should be ready to go. All the way. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. We all can recite. Americans yearn to explore life's deepest truths, and to say their entertainment, or their idea of entertainment, is sex and violence and crime, is an insult to their goodness and intelligence. We are people who believe love can triumph over hate, creativity over destruction, and hope over despair. And that's why so many millions hunger for God's good news. I've always believed that we were, each of us, put here for a reason, that there is a plan, somehow a divine plan for all of us. I know now that whatever days are left to me belong to Him. I also believe this blessed land was set apart in a very special way. Our forebears came not for gold, but mainly in search of God and the freedom to worship in their own way. We've been a free people living under the law with faith in our Maker and in our future. I've said before that the most sublime picture in American history is of George Washington on his knees in the snow at Valley Forge. That image personifies a people who know that it's not enough to depend on our own courage and goodness. We must also seek help from God, our Father and Preserver. We'll never find every answer, solve every problem, or heal every wound, but we can do a lot if we walk together down that one path that we know provides real hope. The morality and values such faith implies are deeply embedded in our national character. Our country embraces those principles by design, and we abandon them at our peril. My experience in this office I hold has only deepened a belief I've held for many years. Within the covers of that single book are all the answers to all the problems that face us today if we'd only read and believe.
The President of the United States is saying that all the answers to our problems in this day are in the Bible. Unbelievable and incredible.
I think I was just thinking of my thoughts are, how far have we come? I mean, when the days of Reagan were very, very good times, both economically and morally for the country. I think the verse that comes to mind as a voter, as a Christian, is the verse that, comes from the Old Testament. As for me and my house, I belong to the Lord. And so as for me and my vote goes to the Lord. And whatever else happens, may it take place as it may, but I need to be educated. I need to know who I'm voting for, where their principles lie, how closely they align to God and the Bible, and that I'm doing my part.
I also want to point out to the blessed viewers that by no means do we deify anyone or say this person is a saint or a great man, because we are all human, we all make mistakes. But I do want to call your attention to the attacks, the vicious attacks on conservatives and Christians, namely, that they don't care, they want children to sleep hungry at night, and they don't care about the poor. I'd like for the blessed viewers to be open-minded and to examine where have they seen this hateful message from a Republican or from a conservative or from a Christian. When did they hear the message firsthand with their own ears, not someone trying to transcribe what was said earlier? Also, keep in mind that we make mistakes. If a great leader can make a mistake, but there's a difference between a mistake, an unintentional end result, and someone who's tirelessly working towards a specific end.
Well, I think you guys led to it. You said how far we've come. Shoot a couple of bullet points, not to be negative, but to also to not use the old tired line, which I despise, of they're all politicians. For the first time in the history of this country, 236 years, 230 plus years, we had a president who dedicated a month to homosexual marriage, or to homosexuality in general. We had a president who covered up Christ's silhouette at a Georgetown speech, which is a Jesuit Catholic school. We had a president who, in a deliberate act of disrespect, nominated 3 pro-abortion ambassadors to the Vatican. All of them were rejected, obviously, because they're not an abortion country. Misquotes the national motto often by saying it's a pluribus unum, when it's officially in God we trust. And I can go on and on. He forgives student loans in exchange for public service, but announces that it will no longer forgive student loans if the public service is related to religion. Like Otzek said, it's one thing for Reagan made many mistakes, and I thought I didn't agree with some of his philosophies on certain things, but there was no pattern of behavior that's anti-Christian, anti-God. So maybe Obama could have rattled off a few verses, but we saw from Reagan's actions what kind of man of God he was.
We have Anton on the line. Anton, thank you for calling the Coptic Cafe program on Logos TV. What's on your mind?
Yes, Abuna, may I talk in Arabic or do I have to?
Try to do your best in English so the viewers can follow what you are saying.
Yes, just from the Holy Bible, maybe you mentioned it before. From Genesis 19, it's the Sodom and Gomorrah, and also from Romans, first chapter, and I think verse maybe 12 or
yes.
And also from 1 Corinthians 6, chapter 6, verse 9, I think. Also Leviticus, chapter 20, verse 13. Also 1 Kings, chapter 22, and verse 46. Also 2 Kings, chapter 23, verse 7. Also Judges, chapter 19, verse 22. Galatians, chapter 1, verse 10. I think all of these verses show that from the Old Testament and also the New Testament, the Holy Bible against homosexuality. So I think that way, maybe kind of like by letting such things going, we are bringing curse from God, and I think this is something very serious. I think those who are behind such agendas like the Zion movement and all of these organizations, or I don't know how they call it, basically the result of all of these efforts are shown now with all of the, instead of surplus for America, it's going down in so many ways.
Yes.
Instead of being the first country all over the world, I don't know how they, how we have it now. So,
yes, thank you, Anton, for calling, and thank you for the excellent list of the verses, Bible verses regarding homosexuality. I'm sorry, we have to get going and cut you off. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me this evening. I'd like to close with a quote and a thought. The quote from Dennis Prager says, "We have removed ethics from the Bible-based soil that gave them life, and think they can survive removed from that soil. Fools and those possessing an arrogance bordering on self-deification think we will long survive as a decent society without teaching the Bible and without consulting it for moral guidance and wisdom. We cannot continue as a society in the path we are continuing. We need to go back to the teachings and the principles of the Bible. We don't hate anybody, we don't attack anyone, but we stand firm behind the biblical principles. To echo the words of the great president, President Reagan, and I still can't believe that the president of this land once spoke like this in his speeches, public speeches. Are we on God's side or are we not? Did the First Amendment exist to protect the values and the teachings that this country was founded on from the people, or was it written to protect the people from values? You've been watching the Coptic Cafe program. Thank you for being here with us this evening. We look forward to seeing you next time. Good night.
لوجوس تي في. أن نحضر كل إنسان كاملا في المسيح يسوع.